At dawn, Hercule Poirot steps from a sleigh into Blackthorn Manor's melting embrace, where a locked study hides a corpse with a throat slit ear to ear. Yet no footprints mar the virgin snow. 10 chapters of wire, pearls, and poisoned whiskey unravel a 1930s locked-room murder. A child's ghost whispers through the walls. A doctor's steady hand pulls invisible strings. Lies crystallize, then crack. As the moor drinks the last of winter, Poirot's little gray cells ignite crimson truth. One question remains. Who cut the final thread? Chapter 1. The House That Snow Sealed. The wind that night had teeth. It gnawed at the Yorkshire moors until the very earth seemed to shiver and every blade of heather bowed in surrender. Blackthorn Manor rose from the white waste like a cathedral built by giants who had forgotten mercy. Black stone, lancet windows, gargoyles whose stone throats poured icicles instead of rainwater. Snow had drifted to the sills of the ground floor. The upper stories were half buried so that the house appeared to sink even as it loomed. Hercule Poirot stepped down from the sleigh with the neatness of a man who refuses to be discommoded by weather. His patent leather shoes, absurd in such a wilderness, left perfect ovals in the virgin crust. The driver, a taciturn moorman wrapped in sacking, touched his cap and vanished into the dark before Poirot could offer thanks. The bells of the sleigh faded like a dying heartbeat. The great oak door stood ajar. A rectangle of amber light spilled across the snow, trembling as though afraid to venture further. Poirot paused on the threshold, gloved hand upon the iron latch. Snowflakes settled on the brim of his Homburg, melted, ran in crystal rivulets down the curve of his famous moustache. Mon Dieu, he murmured. Even the elements conspire to dramatize. He crossed into the vestibule. The air inside was warmer yet not welcoming. It carried the scent of beeswax, coal smoke, and something metallic. Blood, perhaps, or merely the iron tang of extreme cold. A suit of armor flanked the door, visor raised, empty eye slits staring. Poirot inclined his head in polite acknowledgement, as one professional to another. From the shadows of the staircase came the scrape of boots. Constable Hargreaves emerged, lantern trembling in a hand that had forgotten how to be steady. His uniform was dusted with snow. His cheeks were raw. "Mr. Poirot, sir. Thank God you've come. It's Sir Reginald, in the study. Door bolted from the inside, key still in the lock on this side. We daren't break it down till I have seen," Poirot finished gently. "Lead on, mon ami." But first, he produced a silver hip flask, unscrewed the cap, offered. "A little brandy. You are frozen to the soul." Hargreaves swallowed gratefully, color creeping back into his lips. "Never seen a winter like this, sir. Roads blocked since Tuesday. No telephone, no telegraph. We're cut off entire." "Cut off," Poirot repeated, savoring the phrase. "Like a limb from the body, or a head." They ascended the grand staircase. The steps were carpeted in faded crimson, the color of old arterial blood. Portraits lined the walls, blackthorns through the centuries, all hawk noses and powdered wigs, all staring down with the same expression of aristocratic disdain. The newest, Sir Reginald himself, hung at the landing. The painter had caught the glint of cruelty in the eyes, the thin-lipped smile that suggested amusement at another's pain. At the first-floor corridor, 5 figures waited beneath a chandelier whose candles guttered in the draught. Lady Alara Blackthorn stood foremost, a study in black velvet and diamonds. Her gown was the fashion of 5 years past, as though grief had preserved her in formaldehyde. Her face was beautiful in the way of marble statues, perfect, cold, and faintly cracked. She held a lace handkerchief, but her eyes were dry. Beside her, Dr. Felix Morland, tall, ascetic, the sort of man who looked born in a white coat. His hands were gloved in pale kid despite the warmth indoors. The gloves were spotless, almost luminous. His eyes, gray, surgical, flicked over Poirot with professional assessment. Miss Verity Shaw, the niece, hovered at the edge of the group. 23, perhaps 24, dressed in dove-gray wool that made her seem part of the snow outside. Her hair was the color of weak tea. Her mouth trembled as though perpetually on the verge of apology. Mr. Giles Carver, secretary, clutched a leather document case to his chest like a shield. His spectacles were fogged. He cleaned them nervously on a silk pocket square, only to fog them again with his breath. Lastly, Mrs. Danvers, the housekeeper, a gaunt woman in bombazine whose rosary clicked with every breath. Her lips moved in silent Latin. Poirot bowed to the company with the precision of a courtier. "Madame, Monsieur, I am Hercule Poirot. You have summoned me to untangle a knot. Let us begin with the knot itself." He turned to the study door. It was paneled oak, iron-bound, the lock ancient and formidable. The key protruded from the keyhole on the corridor side, exactly as Hargreaves had described. Poirot knelt, peered through the keyhole. The room beyond was lit by firelight and a single green-shaded desk lamp. Sir Reginald Blackthorne sat in a high-backed chair facing the door, head lolling sideways at an angle no living neck could achieve. His throat had been opened from ear to ear. The wound gaped like a second mouth frozen in a crimson grin. Blood had sheeted down his shirt front, stiffening the starched linen into a scarlet bib. More blood had pooled on the desk blotter where it had begun to freeze in delicate lacquer patterns. Yet the fire in the grate burned merrily. Logs crackled. Sparks flew up the chimney like tiny souls escaping hell. Poirot straightened. "The door is bolted from within?" Hargreaves nodded. 2 bolts, top and bottom, heavy iron. No key needed from inside, just slide them home. "And the window?" "Latched. Frost on the inside of the pane, snow banked to the sill outside, no prints." Poirot tried the handle. The door refused to budge. He rapped once, twice. The sound was dull, final. "Curious," he said. "The corpse sits upright, yet the head is almost severed. One would expect collapse. Unless—" he produced a slender silver instrument from his waistcoat, a dentist's mirror on an extendable rod. Angling it beneath the door, he studied the bolts. "Both engaged. The upper bolt is stiff with rust. See the scratch marks where force was used. The lower is oiled, slides freely." Lady Alara's voice floated from behind, husky with unshed tears or perhaps brandy. He was alive at supper, laughing, telling Verity she must marry Felix or lose everything. Dr. Morland inclined his head. Sir Reginald believed in continuity of bloodlines. Verity Shaw made a small sound, half sob, half laugh. "He believed in money, Doctor, and in punishing anyone who forgot it." Poirot turned the key. It resisted, then gave with a shriek of metal on metal. He pushed, but the door opened only a finger's breadth before the upper bolt held fast. "Someone inside must draw the bolt," he murmured. "Yet the someone is dead." He knelt again, this time producing a length of silk thread from his pocket. With delicate precision, he threaded it beneath the door, around the lower bolt, and drew it slowly. The bolt slid back with a soft snick. The upper bolt required more ingenuity. Poirot removed his Homburg, extracted a stiff feather from the band, and used it to tease a loop of thread upward along the door's edge until it caught the bolt's handle. A gentle tug, and the second bolt retreated. The door swung inward on well-oiled hinges. The study exhaled warmth and the copper-sweet stench of slaughter. Poirot entered alone. The others crowded the threshold like parishioners at a forbidden rite. The room was exactly as seen through the keyhole, yet more intimate in its horror. Books lined the walls, law, genealogy, treatises on Chilean mining concerns. A brass telescope pointed toward the window, its lens frosted. On the desk, a cut-glass decanter of whiskey, 2 glasses, one bearing a faint smear of crimson lipstick, a silver cigarette box, and a leather-bound diary open to a page half consumed by fire. Poirot circled the corpse. Sir Reginald's eyes were open, filmed with ice. His right hand rested on the blotter, fingers curled as though clutching an invisible pen. The left hand hung limp. From the cuff protruded a corner of white paper. Poirot donned cotton gloves, gently extracted the paper. A single sheet, heavy vellum folded once. He unfolded it beneath the desk lamp. The handwriting was spidery, urgent. If anything happens to me, look to the Chilean bonds. Morland knows. Tell Verity. The sentence ended in a smear of blood. Poirot folded the note, slipped it into an inner pocket. He turned his attention to the wound. The cut was clean, almost surgical, yet deeper on the left side, suggesting a right-handed assailant standing behind the chair. He examined the carpet. Between the desk and the door, a single boot print in blood, size 10, hobnail sole. The print pointed toward the window, yet stopped 2 feet short of the latched casement. Beyond that, the carpet was pristine. Poirot followed the print to the window. The latch was corroded shut. The glass bore a delicate filigree of frost on the inner side. Outside, snow had drifted to the height of a man's chest. No disturbance. He returned to the desk, lifted the whiskey decanter, sniffed. Macallan 1909, expensive, untouched. The glasses, one clean, one with the lipstick smear and a faint sediment at the bottom. He dabbed a finger, tasted. Laudanum, enough to fell a horse. From the corridor came a sudden thud. The chandelier swayed. Candles guttered. Verity Shaw cried out. Poirot whirled. The study door had swung shut behind him, bolted again from the inside. He crossed to it in 3 strides, tried the handle. Locked. The key was gone from the keyhole. Mon Dieu, he whispered. The house itself conspires. Through the door he heard muffled voices, Hargreaves shouting, Lady Alara's sharp command, the scrape of furniture, then silence. Poirot examined the bolts. Both were now thrown from the outside. Impossible, for the bolts were on the inner face of the door. He knelt, peered through the keyhole. The corridor appeared empty, yet on the carpet lay the iron key, 10 feet from the door as though flung by an invisible hand. A draft sighed beneath the door, carrying with it the faint scent of violets. Poirot straightened, mustache bristling. So, the killer is not merely clever, he is a conjurer, and the snow. He glanced at the window where frost feathers had begun to melt in the heat of the fire, forming tiny rivulets that trickled down the pane like tears. The snow is his accomplice. He returned to the corpse, lifted the limp left hand. Beneath the cuff something glinted. A single pearl, the size of a wren's egg attached to a broken gold pin. Poirot turned the pearl to the light, etched on the gold backing almost invisible. E&R, 1918. From the hearth came a sudden flare as a log collapsed. Sparks showered the grate. In their brief illumination, Poirot saw it, a thin groove in the oak floorboards running from beneath the desk to the keyhole. The groove was no wider than a piano wire. He traced it with a gloved finger. At the keyhole, the wood was scored deeper, as though something had been drawn through repeatedly. Chapter 2. 5 Faces, 5 Lies. Poirot stood alone in the study with the corpse, the fire, and the impossible door. The bolt had slid home again from the corridor side, yet no living soul had crossed the threshold since his entry. The key lay where it had fallen, 10 feet down the carpet runner, glinting like a dropped coin. He did not waste motion on panic. Instead, he produced his pocket torch, small, elegant French, and swept its beam across the room with the precision of a surgeon. First, the corpse. Sir Reginald's head had lolled further since Poirot's initial examination. The weight of it threatened to overbalance the chair. The wound gaped wider now, revealing the pale cartilage of the larynx, severed clean. The blood had begun to thaw in the fire's heat. A single drop detached itself from the shirt front and fell plink onto the brass fender. Second, the desk. The diary lay open where the half-burned page had been torn. Poirot lifted it carefully. The remaining entries were meticulous. Investments in Chilean nitrate, a reminder to sack the under-gamekeeper, a note about Verity's unsuitable London friends. The final complete entry dated yesterday. Morland dines tonight. Must settle the marriage articles. If V refuses, the convent gets everything. She will learn obedience or poverty. Poirot's eyebrow arched. Obedience or poverty, a choice most medieval. He closed the diary, slipped it into his overcoat. Third, the whiskey glasses. The clean one bore no prints. Wiped. The second, with the lipstick smear, carried a faint thumbprint in the sediment. Poirot produced a strip of court plaster, pressed it gently, lifted the print. Fourth, the boot print. He knelt. The blood was still tacky, the hobnail pattern sharp. He laid his own shoe beside it, size 7 bespoke lob. The print dwarfed his. Size 10, he murmured. Dr. Morland wears 10s, I think, or Mr. Carver, though his feet are narrow. He scraped a sample of the blood into a second envelope. Fifth, the groove in the floorboards. The beam of the torch followed it from desk to keyhole. At the keyhole, the wood was polished by repeated friction. Poirot inserted a gloved finger. It emerged dusted with fine brass particles. Curious, brass filings. Yet the lock is iron. A soft knock at the door, 3 measured taps. Monsieur Poirot? Lady Alara's voice, husky but controlled. The constable is distressed. May we enter? Poirot crossed to the door, examined the bolts. Both were thrown from the inside now. He slid them back, turned the handle. The door opened onto the corridor where the 5 waited, faces pale in the lantern light. Constable Hargreaves held the fallen key on a handkerchief. It was just lying there, sir. No one touched it till I did. Poirot took the key, weighed it. Heavy Yorkshire iron, cold as gilt. He inserted it into the lock from the corridor side, turned. The tongue clicked home. Observe, he said. The key works from either side, yet the bolts, he demonstrated sliding one, are internal only. To bolt from outside is impossible without... He did not finish. Instead, he ushered them in, closing the door behind. The click of the latch sounded unnaturally loud. The group arranged itself in a semicircle before the corpse. No one looked directly at Sir Reginald. Their eyes slid to the fire, the books, the frost patterns on the window. Poirot took center stage, small and immaculate, between the tall Yorkshire constable and the tall Yorkshire doctor. We begin, he said, with the lies. There are always 5 in a room such as this. The lie of innocence, the lie of grief, the lie of ignorance, the lie of time, and the lie of the heart. Let us examine them one by one. He turned first to Lady Alara. Madame, you dined with your husband at 8 o'clock. What was the mood? She lifted her chin. Civil. He was one preoccupied with estate matters. Yet you wore lipstick the color of fresh blood. Her hand flew to her mouth. I changed after supper. This is morning rouge. Non. The smear on the glass is Carmine Lake, discontinued in 1929. A sentimental shade, perhaps? Dr. Morland interjected smoothly. Lady Alara keeps her mother's cosmetics. A harmless vanity. Poirot's eyes flicked to him. And you, Doctor? You were engaged to Miss Shaw. Announced tonight? Sir Reginald's wish, Morland said. Verity and I have an understanding. Verity Shaw made a small sound of protest, quickly stifled. Poirot continued. Mr. Carver, you typed a new will this afternoon? Carver clutched his document case. Yes, sir. Sir Reginald dictated it at 4. I left it on his desk for signature. Yet it is not there now. Carver blanched. I assumed he signed it. Mrs. Danvers, Poirot turned to the housekeeper. You served the whiskey at 10? 10 sharp, sir. His lordship's habit, 2 fingers, no water. And the glasses? I left them clean on the tray. Poirot nodded. Then someone added laudanum after you left, enough to stupefy but not kill. The throat was cut while Sir Reginald slept upright, hence the posture. He moved investigatively around the room as he spoke, pausing at the window. The frost was melting faster now. Rivulets ran down the panes. Time of death, he said, between 10:30 and 11. The clock stopped at 11:47, tampered with, the hands forced backward. Why? He opened the window latch. It resisted, then gave with a crack of ice. Snow tumbled in. Outside, the drift was undisturbed to the stone sill. Yet the boot print leads to the window from the desk. The killer walked in blood, then vanished. He closed the window, latched it. Now the door. Bolted from within, yet the key thrown into the corridor. A conjurer's trick, but conjurers need assistance. He faced them again. One of you returned after the murder. One of you bolted the door a second time from the outside, using a mechanism we have not yet discovered. One of you threw the key to suggest impossibility. Lady Alara's hand trembled. Her rosary slipped to the carpet with a clatter. Poirot stooped, retrieved it. The beads were warm. Madame Danvers prays. Lady Alara clutches pearls that are not hers. Dr. Morland wears gloves indoors. Mr. Carver hugs documents that may condemn him. Miss Shaw, he turned to Verity gently. You have not spoken. Verity's voice was a thread. Uncle said, if I refused Felix, he'd leave everything to a convent in Santiago. He showed me the will. And you believed him? I believed he was cruel enough. Poirot nodded. Cruelty is the seedbed of murder, but let us plant evidence, not suspicion. He produced the rice paper square with the blood drop, the court plaster with the thumbprint, the brass filings in a twist of paper. 3 clues, he said. The blood will tell us whose boots walked here. The print will tell us whose lips kissed the glass. The brass. He held the filings to the firelight. They glittered like gold dust. Will tell us how the impossible was achieved. From the corridor came the sudden chime of the grandfather clock, midnight. The sound reverberated through the floorboards. Poirot smiled thinly. The house itself keeps time, and time, he said, is the one witness who never lies. He moved to the door, opened it. The corridor was empty, yet on the runner carpet 10 feet from the study lay a single kid glove, Dr. Morland's left, the finger stained rust brown. Morland stared at it, transfixed. Poirot picked it up between thumb and forefinger. Docteur, you have steady hands, but even steady hands leave traces. He turned the glove inside out. The lining bore a perfect thumbprint, in blood. The chandelier flickered. One candle guttered out. In the brief darkness, something metallic whispered beneath the study door, a sound like a wire being drawn slowly across wood. Chapter 3. The study that breathed the door had shut again. The bolt had shot home, and Verity Shaw's scream, sharp, bright, then severed, still hung in the air like a shard of glass. Poirot did not flinch. He stood motionless in the center of the study, eyes half closed, listening not to the room but to the house itself. Blackthorn Manor was old. Old houses breathe. Beams contract in the cold mortar sighs. Floorboards remember every footfall. Somewhere water dripped in a pipe with the regularity of a metronome. On the 4th beat came the sound he waited for, a faint metallic snick from the direction of the keyhole. Poirot's eyes snapped open. He crossed to the door in 3 silent strides, knelt, and pressed his ear to the oak. Nothing. He produced the dentist's mirror again, angling it beneath the door. The corridor runner lay empty. The fallen glove had vanished. "Curious," he murmured. "The house eats evidence." Behind him the fire crackled. A log shifted, sparks spiraled upward. In their brief flare, Poirot saw it. The groove in the floorboards had lengthened. Tskidumamus, fresh scratch. No wider than a hair now extended from the keyhole to the exact spot where the glove had lain. He followed the scratch with the beam of his torch. It curved, delicately, deliberately, around the leg of a mahogany side table, then vanished beneath the Persian rug. Poirot lifted the rug's corner. Beneath, a second groove, twin to the first, running parallel. Between them, the oak was polished to a dull sheen, as though something had been drawn back and forth 100 times. "Piano wire," he said aloud. "High E string, perhaps. Tensile strength sufficient to sever cartilage, and to carry a glove 10 feet. He straightened, dusting his knees. The mechanism was becoming clear. A wire threaded through the keyhole, looped around the corpse's throat, anchored somewhere in the corridor. A sharp pull from outside, snap, and the deed was done. But the bolt, the key, the glove? He turned to the desk. The diary lay where he had left it, but the half-burned page was now completely consumed. Only ash remained, stirred by a draft that should not exist. Poirot opened the window latch. Frost cracked like gunfire. He leaned out. The snowdrift below was undisturbed, yet on the stone sill lay a single pearl, identical to the one found in Sir Reginald's cuff. He picked it up. The gold backing was warm. "Impossible," he whispered. "The sill is 20 feet above the ground." He examined the pearl under his lens. The etching, E and R, 1918, was crisp, but the gold was scratched, as though it had been pried from a setting with force. From the corridor came a soft thud, then the scrape of furniture. Poirot closed the window, latched it, and crossed to the door. He slid the lower bolt, snick, then the upper. He removed the key, weighed it, and slipped it into his waistcoat pocket. "Let us see," he said to the empty room. "Who comes to collect?" He extinguished the desk lamp. The fire provided the only light now, painting the walls in shifting crimson. Poirot took position behind the high-backed chair, Sir Reginald's chair, where the shadows were deepest. Minutes passed. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed the quarter. Then footsteps, light, hesitant, approaching the study door. A pause, the faint rattle of the handle, a woman's voice, Lady Alara's, low and urgent. "Felix, the key?" Dr. Morland's reply, muffled. "He has it. We must wait." Poirot smiled in the dark. The handle turned again, harder. Then silence. He waited. 5 minutes. 10. The fire burned lower. The room grew colder. Poirot's breath plumed. At 0:37 precisely, the keyhole darkened. A slender tool, surgical steel, probed the lock. Click, click, click. The tongue retreated. The door opened a finger's breadth. A gloved hand appeared, feeling for the bolts. Poirot stepped forward, placed his own hand over the gloved one, and pushed the door wide. Dr. Morland stood in the corridor, face pale as bone. Behind him, Lady Alara clutched a candle. Its flame trembled, throwing grotesque shadows. "Bonsoir," Poirot said pleasantly. "You are punctual. I admire punctuality in a murderer." Morland's hand went to his pocket. Poirot's cane, ebony, weighted, tapped the doctor's wrist sharply. A small scalpel clattered to the runner. "Careless," Poirot chided. "Surgeons should keep their instruments sheathed." Lady Alara's candle guttered. We heard a scream. Verity. "Miss Shaw is safe," Poirot said. "Locked in the library with Constable Hargreaves. She is distraught, but alive." He ushered them inside, closed the door, and this time left it unbolted. "Now," he said. We examine the study that breathes. He led them to the groove in the floor. Piano wire, as you see. Threaded through the keyhole, looped around Sir Reginald's throat while he slept, drugged by the laudanum in the whiskey. A sharp pull from the corridor. He demonstrated with an invisible cord, and the carotid is severed. The wire is then withdrawn, carrying with it whatever was attached. He produced the glove from his pocket, the blood-stained left. This, for example, drawn along the groove by the wire's tension, then released to lie 10 feet away. A clever illusion of impossibility. Morland's jaw worked. Conjecture. No, observation. Poirot knelt, lifted the rug entirely. Beneath, the twin grooves converged at a small brass eyelet screwed into the floorboard. Newly installed, the wood around it pale. The anchor, Poirot said. The wire was tied here, passed through the keyhole, looped around the throat, then back through the keyhole to the corridor. 2 pulls, one to kill, one to retrieve the wire and the glove. The bolts were shot by a secondary mechanism, spring-loaded, triggered by the wire's final tension. He pointed to the upper bolt. A fine thread, almost invisible, ran from the bolt handle to the brass eyelet. Lady Alara swayed. Reginald, planned this? No, madam, you planned it. Or rather, Poirot's gaze flicked to Morland. Your accomplice did. He moved to the window, opened it again. The second pearl lay where he had left it, on the sill in full view. This pearl, he said, was dropped from the nursery above. A child's toy catapult, perhaps. The trajectory carries it over the drift and onto the sill. Another illusion. The killer escaped through the window, leaving no prints. Morland laughed, short, bitter. You'll never prove it. Poirot produced the rice paper with the blood drop. The blood on the glove is type O, Sir Reginald's. The thumbprint on the glass is yours, Doctor. Lifted in laudanum sediment. And the brass filings. He opened the twist of paper. Match the eyelet. Installed, I suspect, when you examined Sir Reginald yesterday afternoon. He turned to Lady Alara. And you, madame, provided the distraction, the scream, the candle, the missing pearls planted to suggest a woman's crime of passion. Lady Alara's face crumpled. He was going to disinherit Verity. Leave everything to that wretched convent. Felix said many things, Poirot interrupted gently. But only one mattered. Marry me or lose everything. A motive most potent. From the corridor came the sound of running feet. Hargreaves, breathless. Mr. Poirot, the library door, it's bolted from the inside. Miss Shaw, she's not answering. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Again, the conjurer's trick. He strode into the corridor, the others trailing. The library door stood closed, the key in the lock, on the outside. Poirot turned it. The door opened. The library was empty. The fire burned low. On the hearthrug lay Verity Shaw's dove-gray shawl, and a single pearl earring, but Verity was gone. Chapter 4. Footprints to Nowhere. Poirot stood in the empty library, staring at the dove-gray shawl as though it were a conjurer's silk left after the disappearance. The pearl earring glinted beside it, a tiny moon in a puddle of ash. Constable Hargreaves panted in the doorway, lantern swinging. She was here, sir. I locked her in myself not 5 minutes ago. Poirot lifted the shawl. It was warm. A faint scent of violets clung to the wool. 5 minutes, he repeated. Enough for a vanishing act, if one knows the theater. He crossed to the French windows. They opened onto a narrow balcony buried in snow. The latch was unfastened. Frost on the handles had been disturbed. Outside, the drift rose to Poirot's waist. He leaned out. A single set of footprints, small, narrow, a woman's shoe, led from the balcony to the garden wall 8 feet below. The prints were crisp, the edges sharp. Yet at the wall they stopped. The snow atop the wall was undisturbed, a smooth white table. Poirot's breath plumed. Footprints to nowhere. Our killer grows bold. He examined the balcony rail. A faint groove, twin to the study floor, ran along the underside, ending in a brass eyelet screwed into the stone. A thin wire, nearly invisible, was threaded through it, disappearing into the snow. Dr. Morland appeared behind him, Lady Alara hovering at his elbow. "Verity?" she whispered. "Abducted," Poirot said. "Or complicit. We shall discover which." He followed the wire with gloved fingers. It led downward, vanishing into the drift. "Constable, your lantern." Hargreaves held it high. The beam caught something metallic beneath the snow. A second eyelet anchored to the balcony support. The wire looped through it, then continued along the wall toward the east wing. Poirot straightened. A pulley system. The footprints are a distraction. Someone lowered a board with shoes attached, pressed it into the snow, then winched it back. The wire carries the weight. Morland's face was stone. "You'll need more than theories, Poirot." "No, I need only follow the wire." He led them back through the library, along the corridor, down a narrow servant's stair. The wire, now visible where snow had melted, ran along the wainscot, secured by tiny brass hooks every 6 feet. They emerged into the east wing, a disused billiard room, its table shrouded in dust sheets. The wire ended at a cue rack. One cue was missing. In its place, a spool of piano wire half unwound and a pair of woman's shoes, Verity's, smeared with snow and pig's blood from the kitchen. Poirot lifted a shoe. The sole bore the exact hobnail pattern of the study print. "Size 5, he said. "Miss Shaw's, but the weight is wrong. See?" He pressed the shoe into the dust sheet. The impression was shallow. A board padded with felt. The footprints were stamped, not walked. Lady Alara swayed. Verity helped murder her own uncle? "Or was forced," Poirot said. The shawl, the earring, left to suggest struggle, but the balcony door was opened from inside. No snow on the library carpet. He knelt by the spool. The wire was stained rust-brown in places. He scraped a sample into an envelope. From the corridor came a muffled thud, then the scrape of a chair. Poirot rose. The nursery above the study. They climbed the main staircase. The nursery door stood ajar. Inside, a rocking horse coated in dust, a child's desk, a toy theater with painted backdrops. On the floor lay a child's catapult, wooden, sturdy, the elastic new. Poirot picked it up. The pouch contained a third pearl identical to the others. "The trajectory," he said. "From here to the study sill, 20 feet down, 10 across. A simple matter of angle and tension." He opened the nursery window. Snow tumbled in. Below, the study window glinted in the moonlight. Morland's voice was tight. "You're building a castle of string, Poirot." "String that cuts throats," Poirot replied. He pointed to the floorboards. Another groove, another eyelet. The wire from the balcony ran through it, then down the wall to the study. He followed it to a knot tied around a brass bedpost. The knot was fresh, the varnish scarred. "Miss Shaw was here," Poirot said, "tied perhaps, or tying." A scrap of paper lay beneath the bed, a torn corner of vellum, the same as the diary. The handwriting, Sir Reginald's, was frantic. If Verity refuses, Morland gets nothing. The convent, the rest was missing. Poirot pocketed it. From the hearth came a sudden flare. Someone had lit a fire recently. The ashes were warm. Poirot raked them with a poker. Beneath, the corner of a legal document, the wax seal melted but legible, blackthorn. He lifted it carefully. The visible text, "All my estate to the convent of Santa Lucia, Santiago, unless my niece Verity Shaw shall marry Dr. Felix Morland within 1 year of my death." Morland lunged for it. Poirot stepped aside. The doctor stumbled. Patience, doctor, the will is ash, but memory is not. Lady Alara's voice cracked. Felix, you said Reginald changed it back. Morland's eyes were wild. He was going to. He promised. Promises, Poirot said, are like snow. They melt. He moved to the toy theater. The backdrop showed a painted manor. Blackthorn itself. A tiny paper figure lay on the stage, a man in evening dress, throat red with paint. Beside it, a doll in dove-gray wool Verity stood with a wire noose around its neck. Poirot lifted the doll. The wire was real, piano wire, stained brown. A rehearsal, he said softly. The killer practiced on dolls before the living. From the corridor came the sound of running feet, Mrs. Danvers, apron clutched, face ashen. Sir, the cellar, the wine cellar, Miss Verity, she's there, tied to the racks. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Another stage. They descended. The cellar was vast, stone vaults dripping. Verity Shaw lay bound to an ancient wine rack, wrists raw, mouth gagged with her own scarf. Her eyes were wide, terrified, but dry. Poirot knelt, untied her. She gasped. They said they'd frame me. The will! Uncle burned the real one. Felix Morland stood in the doorway, silhouetted. Lies. Poirot produced the charred fragment. This is the real one, mademoiselle? Verity nodded. He showed me yesterday. Everything to me, unconditionally. Felix forged the other. Morland laughed, high, brittle. Prove it. Poirot turned to Hargreaves. Constable, arrest the doctor for murder and for kidnapping. Morland bolted. Hargreaves lunged, tackled him among the dust-covered bottles. A magnum of '09 claret shattered red as blood. Chapter 5. The Pearl That Vanished. Verity Shaw leaned against the wine rack, wrists chafed raw, dove-gray wool torn at the shoulder. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes, tea-brown sharp, were fixed on Dr. Morland, now pinned to the floor by the constable's knee. Poirot knelt beside the shattered bottle. The label read Chateau Margaux 1900. He lifted a shard. The glass was thick, the fracture clean. Expensive blood, he murmured. But not the vintage we seek. He rose, brushing dust from his knees. Mademoiselle, you say Dr. Morland forged the will. Yet the fragment in the nursery fire is Sir Reginald's hand. Explain. Verity's voice was hoarse. Uncle dictated the new will to Mr. Carver at 4. I was present. It left everything to me, free of conditions. He burned the old one himself. Felix, she glanced at the doctor, must have stolen the vellum, imitated the hand, planted the forgery. Morland spat grit. Lies. She's hysterical. Poirot produced the charred scrap. The seal is genuine. Sir Reginald's signet. The forgery would require the ring. He turned to Lady Alara, who stood at the foot of the stairs, candle guttering in her trembling hand. Madame, the pearls. 3 now. 1 in the cuff, 1 on the sill, 1 in the nursery. All etched E&R, 1918. A wedding gift, perhaps? Lady Alara's knuckles whitened around the candlestick. Reginald gave me a brooch on our marriage. 12 pearls. I lost it years ago. Lost, Poirot echoed, or removed pearl by pearl to stage a passion play. He led them upward, cellar, servants' stair, east wing, until they stood once more in the nursery. The toy theater waited, curtains drawn back like a proscenium. The paper victim still lay on the stage, throat painted crimson. The Verity doll was gone. Poirot lifted the backdrop. Behind, a small door, child height, set into the wainscot. It opened onto a narrow chute, once a dumbwaiter, now disused. The shaft dropped straight to the kitchen. He shone his torch downward. At the bottom, the missing doll. Wire noose tangled around its neck, one glass eye staring up. The vanishing trick, Poirot said. Lower the doll, retrieve the wire. The pearls were fired through the chute the same way. catapult from nursery to study sill or kitchen to balcony. He climbed down the chute, nimble despite his stature, emerging in the kitchen. Mrs. Danvers stood at the range, stirring something that smelled of mutton and regret. "Madame Danvers," Poirot said, "you saw Mr. Carver on the back stair at 10:30 with a tray?" She nodded, rosary clicking. "Whiskey for his lordship, 2 glasses. And the laudanum?" Her eyes flicked to a shelf. A brown bottle, tincture of opium, stood half empty. "I keep it for my rheumatism," she whispered. "The bottle was full yesterday." Poirot pocketed it. Back in the nursery, he assembled them. Verity, Lady Alara, Morland, hands cuffed now. Carver, summoned from the library, spectacles fogged. Mrs. Danvers, Hargreaves. "The pearls," Poirot began, laying the 3 on the child's desk. "They are the chorus of this tragedy. Each appearance is a lie told in light." He held the first cuff pearl to the candle. "This was pried from the brooch with a scalpel. See the scratch on the gold. The second, sill pearl. Fired from the nursery, landed on the sill to suggest escape through the window. The third, catapult pearl. Meant to be found in the chute, implicating Miss Shaw." He produced the brooch itself, found moments ago in Morland's medical bag, hidden in a false bottom. 11 pearls remained, the 12th setting empty. Lady Alara gasped. "You stole it!" Morland's smile was thin. "Reginald gave it to me for Verity's engagement. I merely borrowed the pearls." "For murder," Poirot corrected. "Each pearl a breadcrumb leading away from the true path." He turned to Carver. "You typed 2 wills, the real and the forgery?" Carver's Adam's apple bobbed. "Sir Reginald dictated the real one. Dr. Morland came later, said his lordship changed his mind, paid me £20 to type the new." "Blackmail," Verity said bitterly. "Felix knew about Uncle's Chilean bonds, embezzled funds. He threatened exposure unless Uncle forced me to marry him." Poirot nodded. The diary page, "Morland knows about the Chilean bonds," was torn out to hide the motive. But the ashes remain. He raked the nursery hearth. Beneath the fresh kindling, a curl of vellum, the missing corner. It read, "Sir Reginald's hand, undeniable." Morland lunged again. Hargreaves restrained him. Poirot faced Lady Alara. "And you, madame, the lipstick on the glass, Carmine Lake, 1929. You kept your mother's shade for sentiment?" She lifted her chin. "I kissed the glass to frame myself. Divert suspicion from Felix. He said it was the only way." "Love," Poirot said softly, "is the most dangerous red herring." He moved to the window. Dawn was breaking, gray light seeping through the snow. The garden wall glittered. "The footprints to nowhere," he said. "Let us follow them to somewhere." They descended to the garden. The snow had ceased. The air was still as glass. The footprints from the balcony led to the wall, then, impossibly, continued along the top of the wall, a single line of impressions no deeper than a cat's. Poirot climbed a stone bench, examined the wall's coping. A narrow plank, painted white, lay atop the snow, ends weighted with bricks. Beneath, the wire stretched taut, anchored to a drain pipe. He lifted the plank. The footprints were stamped into its underside, Verity's shoes nailed to wood. "A tightrope walker's prop," Poirot said. The killer walked the plank, stamped the snow, then winched plank and wire back to the balcony. The cat's paw prints are the wire's tension marks. Verity stared. "But who?" Poirot pointed to the drain pipe. A ladder leaned against it, short, collapsible. The rungs wrapped in rags to muffle sound. "Mrs. Danvers," he said gently, "your rheumatism does not prevent climbing." The housekeeper sank to her knees in the snow. "He promised me a cottage, a pension. I only helped with the pearls." Poirot helped her up. "You are accessory, madame, but not murderer." He turned to Morland. The mechanism was yours, the wire, the eyelets, the forged will. Lady Alara provided distraction, Mrs. Danvers the pearls, Mr. Carver the typewriter. Miss Shaw, he bowed to Verity, was the bait. Morland's defiance cracked. Reginald was dying anyway, cancer. I merely accelerated inheritance. Poirot's eyes were winter steel. You accelerated justice into my hands. From the manor came a sudden crash, glass shattering. Hargreaves spun. The conservatory! They ran. The conservatory doors stood open, snow drifted across broken panes. On the tile floor lay the fourth pearl, shattered, the gold backing bent, and beside it, Sir Reginald's signet ring pried from his dead finger. Chapter 6. A note in a dead man's. Hand Poirot knelt in the slush, coat-tails immaculate despite the ruin. He lifted the ring with a silk handkerchief. The intaglio, a raven clutching a quill, was clogged with congealed blood. Sir Reginald's seal, he said, removed post-mortem. The forger needed it to authenticate the false will. Verity Shaw stood shivering in the doorway, shawl clutched around her shoulders. He wore it always, even to bed. Poirot turned the ring. Inside the band engraved in a lover's hand, Ilara and Reginald, 1918. Lady Alara made a small sound, half sob, half laugh. He swore he'd be buried in it. Promises, Poirot murmured, are like glass, easily broken. He pocketed the ring and stood. The conservatory smelled of crushed geraniums and iron. A trail of wet footprints, small, bare, led from the shattered pane to a side door that opened onto the kitchen garden. The prints ended at a patch of churned snow as though someone had stood there a long while waiting. Poirot followed. Beneath the churned crust, a child's wooden clog painted gold, the sole studded with tiny nails. He lifted it. The nail pattern matched the cat's paw marks on the garden wall. Mrs. Danvers, he called. The housekeeper appeared, rosary clicking like ice in a glass. You have grandchildren? She shook her head. None living, sir. Then this clog belongs to a ghost. He led them back through the manor, kitchen, scullery, servants' hall, until they reached the boot room. On a shelf, a row of children's boots, relics of blackthorn heirs long dead. One pair missing. Poirot opened a cupboard. Inside, a coil of picture wire, a jar of gold paint, a packet of hobnails. The props cupboard, he said. Our conjurer is resourceful. They climbed to the attic. The space was vast, rafters black with age, trunks stacked like sarcophagi. A single skylight admitted gray dawn. In the center, a dressmaker's dummy wearing Sir Reginald's evening cloak, throat circled by a crimson scarf. A fountain pen, Parker duofold, gold nib protruded from the dummy's breast pocket. Poirot removed the pen. The cap was smeared with dried blood. Inside, a microscopic droplet, still liquid. Type O, he said. Sir Reginald's, the murder weapon's twin. He uncapped the pen. The nib was bent, forced. The suicide note, Verity whispered. Uncle's hand was crippled with arthritis. He dictated everything. Poirot produced the note from his pocket, the one found clenched in the corpse's fist. Forgive me. The pain is unbearable. Tell Verity the estate is hers alone. He laid it beside the dummy. The scarf was pinned with a straight pin. The note had been pierced the same way, then transferred to the dead man's hand. Staged suicide, Poirot said. The pen forced between stiff fingers, the note pinned, then released. Rigor held it in place. Dr. Morland, cuffed to Hargreaves, sneered. Still, conjecture. Poirot opened a trunk. Inside, the missing nursery doll, Verity's effigy, its wire noose replaced by a child's jump rope. Beside it, a child's slate. Chalked in a childish scrawl, Poirot's mustache twitched. A message, or a confession. He moved to the skylight. It was unlatched. Snow had drifted onto the sill. Outside, the roof sloped gently to the eaves. A line of tiny footprints, bare feet, led to a chimney stack, then vanished. He leaned out. The chimney was wide, soot-blackened. A rope ladder, silk, theatrical, hung inside, disappearing into darkness. "The final act," Poirot said. The killer escaped via the roof, descended the chimney to the study hearth, planted the note, retrieved the ring, and exited the same way. The fire was built high to mask the soot. He climbed the ladder, nimble as a cat, emerging in the study chimney. The grate was cold now. Soot had been swept into a neat pile. Poirot brushed his gloves. The fire burned after death, to warm the room, thaw the blood, create the illusion of recent struggle. He examined the hearth. Beneath the ash, a child's mitten, soaked in blood. "Size small," he said, but the hand that wore it was adult. He returned to the attic. The group waited in silence. He turned to Morland. "You needed the ring to seal the forgery. You needed the note to suggest suicide. You needed the pearls to scatter blame." Morland's composure cracked. "He was a tyrant. The bonds he stole from orphans in Chile. Justice," Poirot said, "is not yours to dispense." From the trunk came a sudden clatter. The lid lifted an inch. A child's voice, high, sexless. "Let me out, it's cold." Hargreaves yanked the lid. Empty. Only a gramophone record, Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor, spinning on a hidden clockwork. Poirot lifted the record. Beneath, the real will, folded small, seal intact. "To my niece Verity Shaw, all my estate free of condition, let no man compel her." Verity took it with trembling hands. Lady Alara sank to her knees. "Reginald." He changed it back. Morland lunged, wild, desperate. The cuff snapped. He seized the fountain pen from Poirot's pocket, lunged for Verity. Poirot's cane cracked across the doctor's wrist. The pen flew, clattered into the dumbwaiter shaft. Hargreaves tackled Morland. The doctor's head struck the floorboards. Once, hard. He lay still. Silence. Poirot retrieved the pen from the shaft. The nib was clean now. The blood droplet had transferred to the real will, a crimson period at the end of Sir Reginald's signature. He capped the pen, slipped it away. "The note in a dead man's hand," he said softly, "was never suicide. It was accusation." From the skylight came a sudden gust. The rope ladder swayed. A single pearl, the 12th, rolled across the attic floor, coming to rest against Morland's boot. Chapter 7. The wire beneath the carpet. Poirot stood, motionless, eyes half closed, letting the house speak. Blackthorn Manor had secrets in its bones. He listened for the creak that did not belong. It came from below, directly beneath the attic floorboards. A faint, rhythmic tap, 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 like a blind man testing a wall. He knelt, pressed his ear to the oak. The sound was metallic, traveling along the joists. "Wire," he murmured, still singing its song. He traced the vibration with gloved fingers. It led to a knothole near the chimney breast. Beneath the knot, a brass screw newly polished. Poirot unscrewed it. A panel, child-sized, swung inward on silent hinges. A shaft dropped straight down, lined with brick, the width of a chimney, but clean. A silk rope ladder, identical to the one in the skylight, hung within. Poirot shone his torch. The beam caught a glint 20 feet below. The 13th pearl threaded on a loop of piano wire, swaying gently. "The heart of the house," he said. "The original dumbwaiter shaft, sealed when the nursery was converted. Our killer restored it." He descended, hand over hand, patent shoes finding purchase on the rungs. The others followed, Hargreaves dragging Morland's limp form, Verity clutching the real will, Lady Alara candle in hand, Mrs. Danvers whispering Ave Marias. The shaft opened into a narrow priest's hole behind the main staircase. Dust lay thick, cobwebs draped like funeral lace. In the center, a child's tea table set for a party that never ended. Porcelain cups, a silver teapot, a plate of sugared violets turned to stone. On the table, the suicide note, original in Sir Reginald's hand, ink still wet. Forgive me. The pain is unbearable. Tell Verity the estate is hers alone. Beside it, a second sheet, the forgery, ink dry. Poirot compared them beneath the torch. The original, left-handed arthritic scrawl. The forgery, right-handed fluid. The same pen, the same ink, but two different souls. He lifted the teapot. Inside, the Parker duofold's missing nib, snapped clean. The break was deliberate, he said, to force the note into the corpse's rigid fingers without smudging. From the shaft above came a sudden twang. The silk ladder cut. It fell in a heap, severing escape. Hargreaves swore. Trapped! Poirot's eyes gleamed. Or herded! He examined the priest's whole walls. One panel was newer, pine, not oak. He pressed, it swung into the main hall. They emerged beneath the grand staircase. The grandfather clock stood at 12:07, hands frozen since midnight. Poirot opened the clock case. Inside, the wire spool now empty, and a child's music box playing Chopin backwards. He lifted the spool. The wire's end was frayed, cut with surgical scissors. Moreland's, he said, from his bag. Verity pointed to the carpet runner. Beneath the fringe, the twin grooves running the length of the hall disappearing under the study door. Poirot knelt, lifted the runner. The grooves were polished bright. Brass filings glittered like gold dust. He followed them to the study. The door stood ajar, unbolted. Inside, the room had been ransacked. Books strewn, desk drawers emptied, the whiskey decanter shattered. The corpse still sat upright, but the throat wound had been widened. A second cut, crude, post-mortem. Poirot's mustache bristled. Desecration. The killer returned. He examined the wound. The new cut was jagged, made with the broken fountain pen nib. To destroy evidence, he said. The wire left a clean line. This obscures it. On the blotter, a fresh note scrawled in blood. Hargreaves paled. A madman. No, a magician destroying his apparatus. Poirot moved to the hearth. The fire had been raked. Beneath the ashes, the signet ring melted into a lump. He lifted it with tongs. The gold had fused with a brass eyelet, the anchor from the study floor. The heart of the house, he repeated. The wire ran from attic to priest's hole to study, threaded through the clock mechanism. The clock's chime masked the twang of the wire. He demonstrated the wire had been looped through the clock's pendulum, tensioned by the weights. At 11:47, the pendulum stopped, triggering the final pull that threw the key into the corridor. Genius, Poirot said, but genius leaves fingerprints. He produced the laudanum bottle, empty. Mrs. Danvers, your rheumatism bottle. Dr. Moreland refilled it with Sir Reginald's blood, type O, to stain the glove, the mitten, the pen. The housekeeper wept. He said it was for the inquest. Poirot turned to Moreland, now stirring. You needed blood that would not clot. You needed the ring to seal the forgery. You needed the note to suggest suicide. You needed the pearls to scatter blame. You needed the child's props to create a ghost. Moreland's eyes opened, gray, cold. You'll never prove the wire. Poirot lifted the carpet entirely. Beneath, the wire itself coiled like a sleeping snake, one end fused to the melted eyelet, the other threaded through the keyhole and out into the corridor, where it ended in a child's mitten soaked in blood. He held it up. The wire beneath the carpet. Your confession, Doctor. Moreland laughed, hoarse, broken. Reginald was dying. I gave him peace. You gave him murder. From the priest's hole came a sudden clatter. The tea table had overturned. The porcelain cups lay shattered. The sugared violets crumbled to dust. In the center, the 13th pearl, real, warm, threaded on the wire's final inch. Poirot lifted it. The gold backing was engraved. Lady Alara gasped. We lost a child, stillborn. Reginald kept one pearl for her. Poirot closed his fist around it. The heart of the house was never the shaft, it was grief. He turned to Morland. You used a dead child's memory to stage your crime. That is the vilest red herring of all. Morland lunged, weak, desperate. Hargreaves pinned him. Poirot faced the group. The wire is cut, the pearls are gathered, the note is explained, the game... From the clock came a sudden chime. 13 strokes. Impossible. The study door slammed shut. The bolt slid home. Chapter 8. The Doctor's Steady Hand. Poirot did not flinch. With the precision of a watchmaker, he drew his ebony cane and hooked the wire, twisting it free. The strand recoiled, whipping the carpet like a dying eel, then lay still, severed by its own tension. Enough theatrics, he said, voice calm as frozen steel. The magician's final flourish. Dr. Morland stirred on the floor, eyes fluttering open. Blood matted his hair. His surgical gloves, torn now, revealed hands that trembled not from cold but from the unraveling of his grand illusion. Hargreaves hauled him upright. You're nicked, Doctor, for murder, forgery, and for the steady hand that cut a throat across a room, Poirot finished. He knelt, coiling the wire with deliberate care. High E piano string, tensile strength, 200 kilograms, length, 15 meters, anchored in the priest's hole, threaded through the clock, the keyhole, the eyelets, a symphony of death. Morland spat blood. Prove the hand was mine. Poirot produced the kid glove, the left, blood-stained. This was drawn along the groove by the wire's retraction. Your glove, Doctor. Monogrammed FM inside the cuff. He turned it inside out. The lining bore a perfect palm print, in laudanum residue. Laudanum to sedate the victim, blood to stain the props. Your steady hand mixed them. Lady Alara's candle guttered. Felix, you said it was painless. Morland's laugh was ragged. It was. He never woke. Poirot assembled them in the study, corpse still presiding like a macabre host. The fire had died to embers, frost feathered the windows anew. Now, Poirot said, we dissect the doctor's steady hand. Timeline, precise as a scalpel. Morland's eyes narrowed. Fantasy. Fact. Poirot produced the Parker duofold from his pocket. Your pen. Borrowed yesterday to sign charts. The nib snapped to force the note. The cap. He uncapped it. Inside, the crimson droplet, now dried to a flake, held the blood reservoir. Microscopic, but enough for the mitten, the glove, the carpet. He swabbed the cap with rice paper, held it to the embers. The flake melted, releasing the metallic scent. Type O, Sir Reginald's, drawn post-mortem with your syringe, another tool from your bag. Verity Shaw's voice was steel. You killed him for money, for me. Morland met her gaze. For us, the bonds he embezzled millions, the convent a lie to control you. Marry me or poverty. Poirot's eyebrow arched. Blackmail, the oldest motive. He moved to the desk, opened the diary to the charred page. Morland knows about the Chilean bonds. You discovered the fraud during a medical examination. Threatened exposure unless Sir Reginald forced the marriage and changed the will. Morland nodded slowly. He agreed, then reneged, burned the forgery. I had no choice. Choice, Poirot echoed. You chose the wire because it left no prints. Your steady hand, gloved, pulled from the priest's hole. No footprints, no weapon in the room. He demonstrated with the coiled wire, looping it around the chair's neck. The groove guided it. The eyelet anchored it. The clock timed it. Lady Alara wept. I planted the pearls, the lipstick, I thought, to protect him. Love, Poirot said gently, blinds the steady hand. He turned to Mrs. Danvers. You provided the laudanum, the pearls from the brooch. The child's props, your grandchildren's relics? She nodded. He promised a cottage. Carver adjusted his spectacles. I typed the forgery, 20 pounds. Poirot faced Morland. Accomplices galore, but the steady hand was yours. He produced the syringe from Morland's bag, hidden in the false bottom with the brooch. The plunger was stained rust brown. Blood drawn here, injected into the pen cap, the perfect reservoir. Morland lunged, final desperation, his cuffed hands clawed for the syringe. Poirot sidestepped. The doctor crashed into the desk, scattering pearls like hail. Hargreaves pinned him. It's over. Morland sagged. He was dying. Cancer, 6 months. Mercy. Mercy, Poirot said, is not a garrote. He gathered the pearls, 13 now, threading them on the wire like a rosary. The doctor's steady hand cut the throat, forged the will, staged the impossible. But the little gray cells, he tapped his temple, are steadier. From the hearth came a final flare. The melted signet ring bubbled, the raven crest dissolving. Poirot pocketed the pearls. The brooch restored, the will validated, the wire evidence. Morland's head lolled. The game is over, Poirot finished. Chapter 9. The will in the firelight. Poirot turned the little machine beneath the desk lamp. A brass plate on the base was engraved in childish capitals. Lady Alara made a sound like a wounded bird. Our daughter, Elizabeth, she was taken by influenza at 7. Reginald kept everything. Poirot's voice was soft. Including grief, the sharpest blade of all. He set the guillotine on the blotter beside the real will. The vellum glowed in the firelight, Sir Reginald's signature defiant even in ash-scented air. Observe, Poirot said. The doctor's steady hand built in cathedral of lies. Wire, pearls, forged wills, impossible footprints. But every cathedral has a crypt. This, he tapped the guillotine, is the crypt key. He opened the desk's hidden compartment fully. Inside, a child's diary, leather-bound. The lock snapped. Pages fluttered like dying moths. Poirot read aloud, his Belgian accent caressing the English words. The final entry, ink faded to brown. Verity's hand flew to her mouth. She was dying. And Morland attended her, Poirot finished. House call for the wealthy. He learned the manor's secrets then, the shafts, the priest's hole, the clock mechanism. He learned grief makes people blind. Morland slumped against the bookcase, laughed, wet, broken. The child was delirious. I gave her peace. You gave her morphine, Poirot corrected, and kept the memory for future profit. He turned the guillotine upside down, screwed to the base, a tiny brass spool, piano wire the same gauge as the murder weapon. The prototype, Poirot said. Elizabeth practiced on paper dolls. You, doctor, perfected it on flesh. He opened the child's diary to a pressed violet. Beneath, a folded scrap, Sir Reginald's handwriting, frantic. Poirot laid it beside the real will. The final blackmail. Sir Reginald burned the forged will, rewrote the true one. You killed him before he could post it. Lady Alara sank to the rug. I helped him. The pearls, my wedding brooch. I thought if we scattered them, no one would suspect Felix. Poirot knelt beside her. You scattered grief, madame, not clues. He gathered the 13 pearls, threaded them on the original wire from the carpet. The necklace complete, flawless, luminous. He placed it around Lady Alara's neck. Your daughter's tears returned. Mrs. Danvers spoke for the first time, voice cracked. I gave him the laudanum bottle. He said it was for Sir Reginald's pain. I believed. Carver removed his spectacles, cleaned them on his sleeve. Endless nervous circles. 20 pounds. Blood money. Poirot addressed them all. Accomplices, yes, but the architect, he turned to Morland, was the doctor with the steady hand. Morland's head lolled. He mocked me, said Belgian detectives were fairy tales. Poirot smiled thinly. Fairy tales have morals, doctor. Yours is this. The steady hand shakes when justice holds the mirror. He opened the study window. Dawn had fully broken. The snow was melting in earnest, sliding from the roof in soft avalanches. The garden wall glittered like a diamond necklace. Hargreaves cuffed Morland properly. You'll hang for this. York Assizes, Poirot corrected. Garot is Spanish. We are civilized. Verity approached the corpse. She touched Sir Reginald's cold hand, gently as though he might wake. He was cruel, she whispered. But he loved me, in his way. She placed the real will on the blotter. The ink caught the firelight, to Verity unconditionally. Poirot closed the child's diary. The will in the firelight is truth, the forged one, ashes. The pearls, returned to their string. The wire, cut. He turned the guillotine once more. The tiny blade caught the sun, flashed like a tear. Elizabeth's toy has cut its last throat. Lady Alara unclasped the necklace, placed it on the desk. For the convent, in her name. Poirot bowed. Generosity from grief, the circle completes. He gathered the evidence, wire, pearls, guillotine, diary, wills, true and false, into his neat valise. Morland was led away. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, steady no longer. The fire popped, one final spark. The corpse seemed to settle, the dreadful grin softening into something like peace. Poirot paused at the door. The snow melts. So do lies. Chapter 10. Little Gray Cells. Crimson Truth. Poirot stood in the doorway, valise in hand, watching the blood spread into a perfect circle. He did not move to touch it. Mon Dieu, he murmured. The house still speaks. He crossed to the blotter. The drop was warm, body temperature. He dabbed it with rice paper, folded it, labeled it in his neat hand. Blackthorn, 0612. The guillotine's lunette was clean, no reservoir, no trick. He lifted the toy. Beneath the base, a hairline crack. He pressed, a panel slid aside. Inside, a glass ampule shattered. The remnants smelled of iron and salt. Blood, he said. Fresh. Drawn this morning. From the corridor came the shuffle of feet, Hargreaves returning with the prisoner. Morland's face was gray, but his eyes burned. You kept one last pearl, Poirot said. A vial of Sir Reginald's blood hidden in the child's toy. A final flourish to suggest the manor itself was haunted. Morland's laugh was a croak. The house is haunted by him. He nodded at the corpse. Poirot opened the study window. The air was mild now. The snow had turned to slush. He leaned out. On the sill, a child's bare footprint. Perfect. Melting fast. He scraped it into an envelope. Size 3. Elizabeth's shoe preserved in the attic. You pressed it here at dawn. Your last illusion. Hargreaves shook his head. He was cuffed all night. No. The cuffs were loose. Your knot, mon ami, was clumsy. He slipped free while you fetched tea. Returned the vial, pressed the print, relocked himself. A surgeon's dexterity. Morland's shoulders sagged. The game was over. I only wanted one more move. Poirot closed the window. Checkmate. He turned to the corpse. Sir Reginald's head had slumped further. The frozen grin was gone. In its place, something almost gentle. Poirot lifted the dead man's hand. The fingers were thawing. Rigor, loosening. He placed the real will in the palm, folded the fingers over it. Rest, monsieur. Your niece is free. Verity entered, coat buttoned for departure. The Moor wind had put color in her cheeks. She carried the pearl necklace, restrung, luminous. For the convent, she said. In Elizabeth's name, and for Uncle's orphans in Chile. Lady Alara followed, eyes dry now. I'll go with it. A pilgrimage. Absolution. Mrs. Danvers clutched her rosary. I'll stay. Tend the house. Someone must. Carver adjusted his spectacles one last time. I've a train to London, a new post, honest work. Poirot bowed to each. The snow melts, the lies with it. He led them to the hall. The grandfather clock stood at 06:30, hands moving again. He opened the case, removed the music box, silenced Chopin forever. Hargreaves loaded Morland into the sleigh outside. The doctor's breath plumed in the mild air. You'll hang, the constable said. Morland looked back at the manor. No, I'll confess. Transportation, perhaps. Chilly. Ironic. Poirot climbed in beside him. Confession is good for the soul, docteur, but not for the gallows. The sleigh moved off. Blackthorn Manor receded, windows glowing like eyes finally closed.